He was not from the streets. He did not come up broke, hungry, or desperate before you bought an OVO hoodie, before you watched the Raptors and suddenly felt like Toronto was your city, before you poured a glass of Virginia Black without knowing who was behind the bottle, before you streamed his album at midnight and felt like he wrote it for you. He already knew you would. Because Drake is not just a rapper. He is a corporation that learned to feel like a person. And this is how he built it. Aubrey Drake Graham was born in Toronto in 1986. His mother was a Canadian Jewish florist and educator. His father was a Black American drummer from Memphis who played with Jerry Lee Lewis and left the family when Drake was 5. That split produced something important, a child who belonged fully to two worlds and completely to neither. He grew up in Forest Hill, one of Toronto's most affluent neighbourhoods, with his mother, who struggled financially after the divorce. The wealth of the postcode and the reality of their household did not match. He attended a Jewish day school. He played basketball. He was, by most accounts, a fairly unremarkable kid searching for somewhere to belong. At 15, a classmate's father suggested he audition for a Canadian teen drama called Degrassi, The Next Generation. He got the part. He played Jimmy Brooks, a basketball star who gets shot and ends up in a wheelchair, for 7 seasons. And here is the detail most people miss about the Degrassi years. While he was filming that show, while he was memorizing scripts and showing up on a television set, he was also, quietly and without any industry support, making music, not performing it publicly, not shopping it to labels, just making it, preparing. He released his first mixtape, Room for Improvement, in 2006. He pressed 200 CDs. He sold them out of the trunk of his car. Nobody called it a plan at the time, but that is exactly what it was. In 2009, Drake released a mixtape called So Far Gone. He uploaded it to a blog, for free. Within 72 hours, it had been downloaded over 2,000 times. Within 2 weeks, industry figures were calling. Lil Wayne, then the most influential rapper in the world, heard it and reached out personally. Drake signed to Young Money Entertainment, Wayne's imprint under Cash Money Records. The music industry move was calculated in a way that outsiders rarely appreciate. Drake did not sign with just any label. He signed with the label whose artist had the largest cultural footprint in hip-hop at that moment. He attached himself to Wayne's brand at the precise peak of its influence, and in doing so, got a cosign that no amount of marketing could have purchased. In 2010, his debut album Thank Me Later debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200. He was 23 years old. He had been making music for 4 years in obscurity, and the machinery was just beginning to turn. What followed was not just a music career, it was a systematic acquisition of influence, genre by genre, platform by platform, city by city, until Drake had made himself the defining voice of a generation that did not fit neatly into any single box. He was too soft for hard rap, too calculated for authenticity, too commercial for the underground, and he used every one of those criticisms as fuel. Most artists find a lane and stay in it. Drake built his own, and then expanded it until it became the entire highway. His early work blended hip-hop with R&B in a way that radio had not heard. Vulnerable lyrics, sung hooks, production that felt melancholic and cinematic simultaneously. Critics called it soft. The audience called it honest. And the audience was significantly larger than the critics. But the more important move was what he did after establishing that initial sound. He went global before global was a mainstream strategy. In 2015 and 2016, Drake released work that drew heavily from Jamaican dancehall, UK grime, and Afrobeats. He collaborated with artists from those scenes when they had minimal crossover recognition in North America. He did not wait for those sounds to be validated by American gatekeepers. He went to the source. One More Time, Controller, Too Good, Guy Alcester. Songs that sounded nothing like what American rap radio was playing. And they worked. Because the audience he was cultivating was not just American. He understood something that very few artists grasped at the time. The internet had made the global audience accessible to anyone. The question was, who would reach it first? Drake reached it first. And by the time other artists realized what he had done, his cultural footprint extended across continents that American rap had barely touched. In 2012, Drake co-founded October's very own, OVO, as a record label, a clothing brand, and an annual music festival in Toronto. Most artists launch a clothing line as an afterthought, a revenue stream attached to an existing name. Drake launched OVO as a brand first and a revenue stream second. The clothing line was not licensed merchandise. It was a standalone fashion operation, restrained, minimal, premium, that operated independently of his music career and attracted a customer base that extended well beyond his fan base. The OVO owl became a recognizable mark. The annual OVO Fest became a genuine cultural institution, the event that put Toronto on the global music calendar. And then came the Nike partnership. In 2013, Drake signed an endorsement deal with Jordan Brand. But he did not just put his face on a shoe. He became a creative collaborator, a brand partner with input on design, colorways, and product direction. The Air Jordan 12 OVO, the Air Jordan 10 OVO, releases that sold out in minutes and resold on secondary markets for multiples of retail. The Nike relationship was not a celebrity endorsement, it was a co-branding operation, and it generated the kind of cultural currency that money alone cannot manufacture. By the mid-2000s, OVO was a business generating tens of millions annually with or without a new Drake album. He had done what the smartest athletes were doing, made himself economically independent of his primary performance platform. But he was not finished. In 2013, Drake was named Global Ambassador for the Toronto Raptors. The title sounds ceremonial. The impact was not. At the time, the Raptors were the league's forgotten franchise, a Canadian team in an American sport, playing in a market that the NBA had never taken entirely seriously. Drake changed the cultural temperature of that franchise. He brought his network to games, he brought cameras, he brought fashion and music and the kind of ambient cultural prestige that turns a sports team into a lifestyle brand. By the time the Raptors won their first NBA championship in 2019, Toronto had become one of the most visible cities in the global cultural conversation. And Drake's fingerprints were on that transformation in ways that a straight business analysis cannot fully capture. He did not just put Toronto on the map. He made Toronto a brand, and himself inseparable from it. The city became the product, and the product reflected back on him. When you bought into Toronto, the music, the fashion, the basketball, you were, in some measure, buying into Drake. That is not marketing, that is identity engineering. When streaming became the dominant consumption model for music, most established artists treated it as a threat. Drake treated it as an opportunity. He was the first major artist to fully weaponize the Spotify and Apple Music algorithm, releasing music with a volume and frequency that kept him in active rotation regardless of whether he had a formal album cycle. Playlists, features, surprise drops, Lucy's released with no promotional campaign. Every release fed the algorithm. Every algorithm placement fed the streaming numbers. Every streaming number fed the headline. And every headline fed the next release cycle. By 2023, Drake had become the most streamed artist in Spotify history, surpassing 75 billion total streams. A number so large it requires a moment to fully register. 75 billion streams. In the streaming model, that translates directly into royalty income. And royalty income, unlike a record advance, does not stop arriving. It compounds. Every month, on every platform, in every country, Drake's catalog generates passive income at a scale that most artists cannot reach with an active tour. He had engineered a financial engine that ran whether he was working or not. That is the definition of a business, not a career.